Good morning, Commissioner, Council.
Morning, everyone.
Today we have Mr. David Hayner to testify, and I'd ask the court reporter if you could please affirm him.
Sir, do you affirm the evidence you are about to give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Morning, Mr. Hayner. Thank you for coming.
Good morning.
I understand that you have worked at Dufferin since 1997. Is that right?
That's correct. Yes.
And you're still there now.
Yes.
And what's your current position and title?
I'm the operations manager for the Northeast District.
And where's that?
Pretty much Barrie, up to Huntsville, across to Lindsay, over to Bancroft area. So a large geographic area.
Okay. Prior to working at Dufferin, prior to 1997, I understand that you worked at the MTO for a period of time. Is that right?
I did, yes.
And how long were you there for?
I worked there about 2 years full-time, and I also did my co-ops through my schooling through the Ministry of Transportation.
I see. And where was your schooling done?
Mohawk College in Hamilton.
In what program?
Civil engineering technology.
Okay. Did you complete that program?
I did, yes.
Okay. And then you went straight to the MTO from there? Is that right?
Pretty much, yes. Yeah.
And then so you joined Dufferin in 1997. Could you just briefly describe for us the roles that you held from then to approximately 2006, 2005, 2006 would be the time period that we're focusing on.
Yeah, so I started as a grademan with Dufferin Construction, working in I'll call it the Hamilton area.
What's a grade man?
A great person, I should say, but my apologies. But grade person basically works with the excavators, the dozers, and the graders, and verifies the grade and the horizontal and vertical alignment of the elevation geometry we're shooting to. Yes.
Okay. Sorry, go on. I interrupted you.
Yeah, and then from there I took a role as a construction coordinator, and then onward to an assistant superintendent, senior superintendent. Did a couple years as an estimator coordinator. Went back out to be a project manager, superintendent on a project, and then I went out and was part of the 407 phase 2 project, where I was a deputy construction manager. And I went beyond your timeline you suggested there, so I apologize.
Oh, that's okay. When was that?
That was 2015. I went out to the 407 East area.
Okay, and I understand that you were the senior project superintendent. Is it from 2002 to 2011? Does that sound about right?
That sounds about right, yes. That area.
When did your involvement with the Red Hill Valley Parkway project begin?
I can't say the exact year. I know it started in the grading, some of the earlier grading staging projects that was in around the King Street area. Timeline 2000 and probably 2004-ish. I think
the grading tenders were issued and awarded in 2004 and one in 2005. So does that sound about right?
Yes. Yeah, that does. Yeah. Yeah. I took over for another superintendent that started them. Yes.
Oh, so you didn't begin as superintendent of that project. You took over for someone else.
I took over. Yes, it had started.
Okay. And so that was your first involvement though in the project with the grading?
Yeah, that's correct.
And did you have, take from your time frame, did you have any involvement with the prior part of the overall Red Hill Valley project, being the Lincoln Alexander Parkway or its extension? No. Okay.
No.
From the time you got involved on the Red Hill project, did you also have other projects on the go, or were you entirely dedicated to the Red Hill?
I was dedicated to the Red Hill for the most part. I might have had some lingering things when I started, and then nearing the completion, I started to get some other assignments as well.
Okay. And could you just describe your general duties and responsibilities as the project superintendent on the Red Hill?
Yeah, so I was certainly I was charged with the safety of the workers and the public, the overall execution of the project, logistics, the finance areas of the project, and just day-to-day resourcing, scheduling equipment and people to the project.
Okay. And did you, for example, deal with the subcontractors?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, certainly. All of the subcontractors and any tradespeople that were required as well. Yes.
And what about the supplies, quantities, things like that?
Yeah, and all the materials that were I simplified that as resources, but yeah, all the materials coming to the job, anything active on that construction site to execute the contract for the city of Hamilton was my responsibility.
Okay. And would you generally be on site daily?
Yes.
Okay. And appreciating, of course, that that grading and paving are different parts of the project. Were your fundamental duties similar during both those phases?
Yes, they are.
And who did you report to?
Jake Sudak.
He was the district manager, is that right?
That's right.
Okay. And what about Peter Gamble? What was your reporting relationship with him?
A bit of a dotted line. He was a manager, I think, at that time of plants and equipment. And as far as we'd have regular meetings where we schedule crews and equipment, and certainly what our needs were of the project, i.e., asphalt, that type of thing, would all be that involved with Peter Gamble.
Peter, because he was involved in the purchasing and decisions relating to the materials to use.
Yeah, related to asphalt, yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And what was your relationship in the hierarchy with Paul Janikis, who was at the time of the paving anyway, he was the senior quality control manager, bituminous. So in the paving, lead up to paving and so forth, what was your relationship with him? Was he a peer or sit in the hierarchy?
Yeah, so Paul basically he would be, he was part of the asphalt group. So when the asphalt crew came on site, he would take the role to work with them and the plant and the lab to ensure mixed properties placement methods were achieved according to the contract. And we worked together, throughout, and certainly he would be our on-site technical person to represent Dufferin.
Okay, and was he, just in terms of the hierarchy, was he a peer of yours, or?
Yeah, I would say yes. Yep.
You didn't report to him; he didn't report to you.
No, that's right.
And who directly reported to you during? We'll just talk about the paving. phase?
Yeah. So the construction coordinators would have reported to me. The foreman would have reported to me. We have project administrators. I would be the estimator coordinator. In this case, they work with me, more of a peer, I would say, as well.
Who was the estimator coordinator that you're speaking of?
For the paving project, it was Rick Teamster.
Right. And James Wari, he was what?
Construction coordinator.
And Brandon Dodds?
Construction coordinator.
Okay. And sorry, I think you mentioned the foreman. Who was that?
There was several foremen on the job, so depending on the discipline, whether it be structures or grading or sewers, that type of thing. So all the foremen, the men and ladies out doing the work, reported to me.
Right, and the foreman for each crew, each paving crew, or?
Yep, paving crews as well. Yes. Yep.
And so did the paving crews, did they reported to a foreman who in turn reported to you? Is that how?
Well, the paving foreman, he was responsible for his own crew. So he was on site with that crew daily. And it was kind of, we kind of operate, not to silo our effects. So they kind of report to me as well as they kind of report to Peter and work with the lab and what have you. But
okay. And just in general, and stick to the sort of paving side of things, you're on site day to day, but at the same time, you're working with people that you've described. What sorts of issues would you typically escalate up to your superiors?
Certainly, if there was issues on the site that I maybe wasn't able to resolve timely, that I felt were going to impact the outcome or the results of the project in any way, they would get elevated. I would say we had a very open, collaborative relationship with my superiors, and we talked about issues regularly, and we did have tours of the project from time to time where we would go through any things that could be of concern.
And in terms of the other entities and people outside of Dufferin on the project, of course, just to name a few, we've got the City of Hamilton, we've got Phillips, the contract administrator, Golder Associates, who's doing quality assurance work at the time. And so in terms of your contact with the city, of Hamilton, and I appreciate the contract administrator was there too, but were you Dufferin's primary point of contact with the city's representative on site?
Yes, so Walt, Phillips being the CA, our communication was direct back and forth. Marco Odie was very active on the project, and we had a good collaborative approach. Whether or not I might bump into him out on the project, we'd maybe discuss an issue or say good morning, and that whatever might be discussed would trickle back to the CA, of course, to keep him in the loop with whatever that conversation may have been, if it was of importance.
I think you said Walter. That's Walter Moranson at Phillips.
Yeah, that's correct.
And how often did you think you interacted with Mr. Odie, whether it be in person or by phone?
Typically it would be in person, and it would vary week to week, day to day type thing. Sometimes I might see him a couple times in a day passing through the job. He might be observing things, and it could be a wave, or it could be, stop for a 10-15 minute chat, that type of thing. But I would say it was reasonably regular, a couple times a week I might see him. And we shared the same compound with Phillips. Our trailer was there next to Phillips, so if he was going in there quite often, we'd see each other in the parking lot as well.
Sort of temporary neighbors.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I've had a lot of them over the years.
And in terms of the city, what about Gary Moore? Is he someone that you had any interactions with, or some?
I'd say very minimal, more of a, if he, I didn't see Gary very often on the project or had much interaction.
Okay. So fair to say from that at least from your perspective, he was on site infrequently. Is that right?
I didn't see him very often, but I can't say for when it was a big, large project. So.
Right. I understand. And so if you had regular, often daily communications with Mr. Moranzan, is that right?
Yep, that would be accurate.
And similar with Mr. Rhodey, or more?
More Walter. Again, I respect boundaries, and that would be my go-to person would be Phillips.
Okay.
For,
and what about Golder? What level of interaction or communication did you have with Golder staff?
Next to zero. I didn't have much interaction with Golder staff at all, or Ludimir for that matter, with the exception of some of the site meetings. I would see Golders.
Right, and you, from reviewing the paving construction site meeting minutes, it appears that you attended every meeting from July 2006 to the end of 2007. Does that sound right?
Yes.
Okay. And often Golder was there, but at those meetings. But outside of those meetings, I understand you're saying that your contact with Golder was pretty minimal.
That's correct.
Okay. And was that Mr. Janikas? That was his, he was more the Dufferin contact with Golder, is that right?
Yes, yeah, that would be right.
And what did you understand Golder's role to be on the project?
More of a quality assurance role related to the asphalt portion of the project.
And was this, was the Red Hill, was this your first project for the city of Hamilton?
Yes.
Okay. And I take it you've been involved with, by that point, a number of MTO projects? Is that fair?
Yeah, that's fair. Yep.
All right. And can you just describe generally how this project differed from, in your experience, from an MTO project?
I would say the methods of communication would be one thing that were a little more defined. We had instruction notices and
Sorry, more defined in which one?
In the MTO market, I would say at that time it was probably a little more developed. Certainly there wasn't as much, the owners, the client, City of Hamilton, and this time maybe the MTO wasn't as active on some of their projects. It was the CA was pretty much 100% the person communicating with. As far as the payments and things like that, some of those processes were different as well. At that time, the ministry had a little, some of the quality requirements were different in how we manage the quality program. Not to say that. not to say there was anything wrong with what we're doing. It was just different and a little more regimented with the processes there.
More regimented with the MTO.
And with the MTO again, yes, sorry.
That's okay. And so it is more regimented. What was your then experience with this project, with the Red Hill project? Am I correct in inferring what you're saying, that the lines of communication weren't perhaps quite so clear? Is that what you're saying?
Well, they were clear. It's just the methods and the processes that we underwent, right? And again, it was, you know, my first City of Hamilton project, so it was new to me, and you know, I guess I was, you know, you get used to dealing with a client and a customer, and you know, the City of Hamilton was very active in the project, as we know the importance and the sensitivity of the Red Hill Valley project. So they certainly had a vested interest and were very much part of the, you know, what was happening on a regular basis.
All right, and did that difference, did that present any problems or challenges for you, or is it just that it was different?
No, just different, just different structure that you know, it wasn't accustomed to.
Okay. And then I had asked you about the site meetings, which occurred throughout the project. What typically was your role at those meetings?
You know, certainly I was representing Dufferin, and you know, if any issues from either side were presented and discussed, and you know, depending on the nature of the issue, it could involve subcontractors, material suppliers, or other technical representatives that, you know, I couldn't speak to. I was kind of the middleman for those sorts of conversations.
Okay. And others attended at the meetings as well from time to time. Were there regular people that were always to attend at those meetings, or just when particular issues that pertain to them were being discussed?
I would say me and my direct team, meaning the construction coordinators, were the regular attendees at those meetings, and then depending on the topics at hand, you know, we would bring in other representatives as needed. You know, the estimator coordinator would attend certainly when he was available as well from our side.
Okay, and so the coordinators being Mr. Wari and Mr. Dodds, right?
That's right. Yes.
And Mr. Treemstra being the estimator.
That's correct.
And Mr. Janicus from time to time?
Yeah, again, you know, when we had those technical discussions on the asphalt, I don't have those expertise to speak to that, so it was just easier that Paul attend those at those times.
So those are issues pertaining to mixed design, issues about aggregates, those sorts of things?
Yeah, any questions that might arise from it, testing, you know, procedures, frequency, those types of things, they could all get flushed out there, sitting together in a collaborative effort.
All right. And as a matter of general practice, if you recall, if matters were discussed at a site meeting and an agreement was made and so forth, and that's recorded in the minutes, was it typical to follow up with confirmation of those things, or just to rely on the minutes? Do you recall?
It could be a bit of both, depending on the clarity of the minutes. Sometimes the minutes don't accurately reflect the discussion or the agreement. So depending on the nature of it, it could be reconfirmed in another piece of correspondence.
And do you recall, were minutes, I know they were circulated, were they typically corrected during the process? If there was, if anyone identified an issue, do you recall that?
I would say from time to time, they may be corrected, not too often, but from time to time. Something could be clarified.
All right. Now, the Red Hill project, as you know, it was a perpetual pavement structure that had a rich bottom mix layer. You recall that?
Yes.
All right. And prior to the Red Hill, is that something that you had worked with, a rich bottom mix and a perpetual pavement?
No.
Okay. That was your first time?
Yes.
And what about Dufferin? Do you recall if Dufferin had done that before? Do you know?
I don't believe they had done a perpetual or a rich bottom mix before. No.
Okay. And the surface course for the main line was stone mastic asphalt, SMA. Had you ever been involved in an SMA placement before?
No.
And do you know, was this Dufferin's first SMA placement? Do you know that?
I believe so. The timeline, it was starting to become more popular, so things kind of meshed together. I know during there was maybe some other active projects going on, but I don't recall we had much experience with the SMA at that time.
So just to be clear, to your knowledge, that it was Dufferin's first project, as far as you know. Is
yes.
That right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And excuse me, the aggregates used for the SMA and super paved 12.5 FC2 surface courses, those were sourced from the DeMix aggregates Varennes Quarry in Quebec. Is that was that source of aggregates? Is that something that you'd worked with before?
No.
Okay. And do you recall if there was any advanced training or education provided to you or other staff with respect to rich bottom mix or SMA with those products prior to the paving taking place?
Not to me. I can't speak to the maybe some information or training or discussions with the crews or the plants producing the mix. That's something I don't got too involved with. Maybe an observer from time to time on things like that, but not part of the training per se.
Yeah, I'm just talking about the for the placement, not the mix and so forth itself. Your end of things.
Yeah, and again, the placement. No, I wouldn't get trained on that. Our crews, through the plants and equipment, they get their training with the equipment and how to best place and the mixes they're using.
Okay. Are you aware of any specific training that they received with respect to the placement?
I'm not aware of it, no.
Okay, thank you.
At that time.
All right. And from what you said, and what others have said, am I correct that you didn't have any role in selection of the components of the mixes, like and specifically the aggregates? That wasn't your end of things, correct?
Correct.
All right. And am I correct that you were not part of the, from what you said, the mix design approval process? That wasn't your end of things?
No.
And when we know that TRO did the actual mix designs, and we've heard that, and I think you mentioned that Mr. Danikas was involved in the mix design approval process for Dufferin. Does that accord with your recollection?
Yes.
And there's a lot of correspondence between Dufferin and Golder, and begins more with Phillips, but then it's Dufferin and Golder about, and this is from late March through July 2007, about, back and forth about pertaining to the selection and approval of the aggregates, the mixed designs, test results, and so forth. And on some of this, not all of it, but on some of this, you're copied. And you've described that you weren't a decision maker on the issues that we discussed, on those issues. So why are you being included in those sorts of communications?
Again, it's it's just to keep informed of the discussions. It certainly involves a project that I have a lot of responsibility for, So, the potential for impact and just knowledge and, having some sort of, I'll say, constructive conversation about something, I'm kept in the loop with what's being, the information being transferred back and forth.
Okay, and I mean, you're the one, as I understand it, who's doing the staging and organizing of the work site, right?
That's right.
And so you, if I understand you correctly, you need to know the status of things so that you can look forward and plan forward for the actual asphalt placements. Is that fair?
I would agree with that, yes.
Okay. If we could go to overview document 3, image 43. Your council's probably discussed this with you, but we've got an overview document which sets out a chronology of events and documents and so forth. And most of the documents that'll take you to, or although not all of them, are summarized in this document. And if I take you to a document, I'll let you know if it's if the entire communication is put there. But if you actually want to go see the underlying document, just let me know. And so the first one here is at paragraph 85, and there's a letter from you to Marco Odie of the city, and if you could expand that for us, please. And as well, if you have trouble reading something and I haven't asked the registrar to expand it, just let me know. And we'll do that.
Thank you.
So this is May 17th, and this is, you're writing to Mr. Odie about a warranty on asphalt on Part A of the City of Hamilton paving contract. And you write, Marco, as stated previously, Dufferin Construction Company, DCC, cannot warranty any of the asphalt placed which was constructed on material placed by others. This is due to unknown quality of granular placed prior to DCC commencing work on this contract. The location which will not be the responsibility of DCC can generally be defined as the area just south of Green Hill structure to the south limits of the contract. Should you require any additional information regarding this issue, please do not hesitate to contact the undersigned. Do you recall this letter and this issue?
Yes, I do.
Okay, and could you just describe what gave rise to this?
Yeah, and it's quite common, if we're doing work on top of other people's work, we would be concerned about the quality. We don't have access to the records of compaction and the actual quality of the materials being used. So there was a couple of settlements that were identified throughout this portion indicated in the letter. And really, it was just defining if a bump showed up at those structures or where those sewer crossings were, Dufferin was not going to be responsible for it.
And by the settlements, you mean what in that context?
So basically, if the road becomes depressed, right? So it basically the material potentially, I don't know if it's not packed properly, it may settle and you'll get a bump in the road. And then, we obviously have our warranty that we give on our work. And should that happen, sometimes, repairs are required. And it was just mitigating costs if that had showed up.
Okay. So, and you're talking about settlement in the previously done work in the grading contract.
Yeah, underneath the granulars and the asphalt, yes.
Okay, and that's Acon did the south portion, which you described there as part A of the contract. Is that right? They did the grading contract for that.
It was another contractor. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I
I can't say that word.
And competition. But the rest of the north from there were Dufferin grading contracts, and that's what you had worked on, right?
That's right.
And given the description of the lines of communication that you described, do you recall why you sent this letter to Mr. Odie specifically rather than Phillips?
I know, I know it was a conversation that likely precipitated from being on site, like at that area. And I believe, and it was kind of, there was, I would say that because it was outside of the work area of the paving contract, I sent it to Marco, as he might have requested it.
Okay, you indicate as stated previously, so you think you probably had a conversation with him?
Yes.
And you said that it's quite common to this. So this is something that you've done on other projects where Dufferin hasn't done the work.
Yes, it doesn't happen very often. Most of the projects, we start, we finish ourselves, but there may be other circumstances that are beyond our control where a similar letter would go out that we can't warranty it. If it was maybe something that we didn't feel was addressed adequately, we might give a similar letter.
And do you recall if there was any follow-up or further discussion of this topic between you and Mr. Odie about this?
I don't recall. I know repairs were done, and I don't recall the details of that. But
sorry, repairs done on what?
The sub base. Obviously, the settlement had to be fixed prior to paving, so there was some work done there.
Okay. And if we could go to image, take that down, please. Thank you. And go to image 48. 48 and 49, please. So it's paragraph 97 that straddles the 2 pages there. And this is on June 22nd, 2007. Mr. Janikas emailed Dr. Uzorowski the SMA mix design for the mainline surface course, and sets out Mr. Janikas's email. And this is one that a number of people were copied on, including you. And so again, is this an example of what you described? You're being copied on it for information so that you know the status at his end of things? Is that consistent?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. And so this is about 40 days before the paving actually started on the SMA on August 1st. In your experience, is this in the normal range for a mixed design to be submitted?
Yeah, normal or on the high end at times, yes.
Okay, sometimes it's later than this. Prior to
sometimes it would be a shorter period, yes.
Okay. And in your experience, is it usual or unusual to have, again, back and forth with the between Dufferin or its representatives and the quality assurance
Um,
consultant about mixed designs?
There sometimes is questions, generally, not as much on, not as much as what was on this project.
Okay. So not uncommon for there to be questions asked, but uncommon for this level. Fair?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. And at this point, when you are, it's the mixed design's been submitted, you have plans about when the paving is going to start, for instance, is that something at this point that you are watching to the progress of so that you can do your staging and prepare for the paving process?
Yep. Very, very much so. Yes.
Okay. And I'm going to show you a couple of emails and that to give you some context and then ask you some questions about it. Actually, and the first thing is on the next page. So if you put 49 and pull up 50 as well, Registrar. Just so we have the timing here, paragraph 100 refers to the July 10th site meeting and the minutes from that meeting. And you'll see under asphalt issues, there's outstanding mixed design approvals and discussion about that. So from what you've described, am I correct that you would have been aware of these discussions, but this wouldn't be the kind of thing that you're leading? Is that right at the meeting?
That's correct.
But then there's the reference to the SMA test strip and wanting to pave that. Is that your end of things?
To a certain degree, setting up the the logistics in the area to make sure it was prepared. Yeah, that would be my involvement.
Okay. And at this point in time, what's your thought process about the timing that's involved with the mixed designs? It does indicate that after a quick glance, they appear to be satisfactory, and Gold will provide written confirmation. And there's a test strip coming up. Is this what are you thinking about the process at this time, if you recall?
Yeah, I'm feeling fairly. I'm feeling confident that we're on the right track and we're ready to go.
And there's a reference in those minutes to on the top of second page, the trial batch of SMA for field labs to work out testing correlation differences, and Golder indicated the vibratory roller currently being used by Dufferin is likely too heavy for SP19 and SMA pavement layers. Do you recall this issue being raised?
Not really, no.
Okay. And nonetheless, as the can you describe what the vibratory roller is? I mean, we understand that Dufferin's rollers all have static mode and vibration mode. Is that right?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. And what's the issue about a roller being too heavy for SP19 and SMA?
Again, I probably have to defer to Golders to answer that. I guess you could do damage if you over compact things. So it was certainly, maybe that was a concern of Golders.
Okay, but as you said, you don't specifically recall it being raised at the time?
I don't recall that concern. No.
Okay. All right, if we could go to image, actually, no, we're there. Okay, image 50 and 51. And I'm going to show you a couple of emails to give you some context, and then I'll ask you some questions. Okay, so the first one here is July 17th, so a week after the site meeting that we just discussed. This is paragraph 101. Mr. Janicas emailed Dr. Uzorowski and Mr. Odie about ignition oven test results. And if you could just take a moment to read that email. And I'll say you were not copied on this. I just want to give you context for what's going forward. Just let me know when you're done.
Yeah, I'm done now.
Okay, great. You can take that down, Registrar. Thank you. And then at paragraph 102, the top of the next page there, Mr. Janicas wrote again to Dr. Uzorowski, providing physical test results and discussing the results of the testing. And this one you were copied on, I can tell you. So if you could just pull that up, please, Registrar. Just let me know when you've reviewed that.
Yep.
All right, and specifically the last couple of paragraphs is talking about the testing, first of all. And from what you've described, and tell me if I'm wrong, you're interested, I take it, in the results about being able to move forward or not being able to move forward, as opposed to the specific test results. Is that fair?
I would say it's fair that, I want to confirm that they meet the contract requirements and that we're moving forward to schedule and complete our obligations under contract. Yes.
Yeah, sorry, I wasn't meaning to suggest that that you're ready to. You want to meet the contractual requirements, but it's Mr. Janicas that's dealing with the specifics of the test results. Is that fair?
That's fair. Yeah.
Okay. So the last two paragraphs, he asks, are the SMA and 12.5 FC2 mixes approved for production? That's the first thing. And then he says, if after reviewing these results, there is still a question of the suitability of the aggregates, please advise Dufferin immediately, and a meeting with all the stakeholders involved will be convened at the earliest possible opportunity. So do you know, or do you recall who was questioning the suitability at that point of the aggregates?
I don't recall, but I remember the ignition oven because it was the first time I heard of it. So I can only say that it was Golders who was looking at that due to the correspondence we just read in the previous exhibit there.
All right, and is that because you were familiar with at least to some respect, with the other method of extracting the aggregates using solvent? Is that something that you were familiar with, but not the?
I'll be honest. I learned probably through this process about that's a process we used as well. So it was a bit of an education for me.
Okay. And so here now we're at July 18th. How are you perceiving this? What are your thoughts at this point about the paving schedule, given that these questions are being raised about the mixed designs and the aggregates?
Yeah, I got to think that we're getting concerned. As we said, we've met the contract requirements that are specified, and we're not getting confirmation that there's alignment with our submissions.
Okay. And what about the top? I mean, at this point, are you concerned about whether you're going to be able to start on the SMA paving when you were intending to? Is that something at this point that you're concerned about?
Certainly, it's got to be on my mind, I'm sure. Yes.
Okay. And if there was, if the mixed designs were not approved at this point, do you have any insight into what sort of delays that would occasion if you had to go back and redo them?
Can you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
Yeah, if the mixed designs aren't approved at this stage, given how close you are to the intended start of paving, do you have any insight as to what sort of delay that would occasion?
Not completely, and I wouldn't know the exact delay to reproduce a mixed design. And again, from reading this, we've met the it sounds like all of our results were within acceptance of the contract. So we would probably dig into again like we have to what the concerns were. And you can see we were trying to get everybody involved to make sure we could try and resolve it and not compromise the project. That certainly we were all working together to meet and get completed.
Okay. And do you recall any discussions? I'm going to take you to some correspondence in a minute, but do you recall any discussions that you had with anyone about the mixed design approval and moving forward at that point in time?
I do feel there would, if I had the opportunity to speak to Walter or Marco, or made an opportunity, it would have been a topic of discussion that, again, we're concerned. We've supplied all the information according to the contract. So, there was if you read the earlier correspondence, you can see that there was people were on board, and we still don't have that approval.
All right, if we could go to DUF 1965.01. So this is an email at the top from you on July 23rd, 2007 to Phillips, and copying Mr. Odie, Mr. Wari, and Mr. Treenstra. Subject SMA aggregate concerns. And we'll look at the email in a sec, but you're forwarding an email below from Paul Janikis to you, and copying Mr. Gamble, subject RHV mixed aggregates. That's dated July 20th. And then if we could expand the just the text for the top email. Walter, please see the attached correspondence regarding the concerns of the aggregate which are to be used in the FC2 and SMA surface course mixes. As you are aware, we still have the test strip for the SMA scheduled for this upcoming Wednesday, and trust that the documents below will satisfy the concerns verbally identified. Should there still be concerns on this matter after reviewing this information, please call me at your earliest convenience so we can arrange a meeting to resolve the matter. And if you take that down, please. The email you're forwarding, the attachments that are indicated there as PDF images have not been located, but you can see if you can expand those. Thank you. There's PDF images on the email for skid resistance report, mixed design examples, Red Hill Valley aggregate physicals comments, Trove 20th July 2007, and DeMix aggregates July 20 Dufferin cover letter. Do you have any recollection of what those attached documents were?
No, not exactly, no.
Okay. Would you have reviewed them before you forwarded them?
Likely not in any great detail, no.
And the first one is a PDF is labeled skid resistance report. Do you recall what that was aside from the obvious wording?
Yeah, all I can say is it was, yeah, the obvious wording. I don't recall, no.
Okay. And before I ask you just some more questions about it, I want to if we look at another document, in overview document 3, image 53. And it's at the top of image 53 there. It's the same day, later the same day. Mr. Janikas emailed Phillips and Mr. Odie about the subject there. As if you can see that, it's prior uses of the DeMix aggregates by the Quebec Ministry of Transportation. And you were copied on that email. And so do you recall, was there a request for the information provided in those 2 emails, yours on the 23rd and Mr. Janikas's on the 23rd? Or do you recall what prompted this?
Yeah, I believe, you know, I would say that, you know, again, there would have been discussion on site, potentially looking for some more history or any more results we may have about using the product, and this is what we were able to come up with our division out of Quebec.
Okay, and do you have any specific recollection of who you were discussing this with?
I would have only been discussing it with Marco and Walter.
Okay.
Phillips.
All right, and in your email, you can take that down, please. And if you can pull up 52, so it's there as well. Thank you. So you see in the middle of the image on the left, image 52 is just your email that we already were talking about. You wrote in your email 3 times you referred to concern or concerns. In the first paragraph, it's attached correspondence regarding the concerns of the aggregate. In the second paragraph, you trust the documents below will satisfy the concerns verbally indicated. And then should there still be concerns on this matter, after reading this information, please call me. So do you recall what those concerns were?
I can only, you know, I would believe the history of the material, and, you know, certainly perhaps there was, you know, it being a new material to Ontario that people weren't familiar with. They were just looking for that was their concern, and they were looking for more history on it.
Okay. And am I correct that it would have been intended that the materials that you forwarded from Mr. Janikas were intended to address those concerns, whatever they were?
Yes, that would have been the intent, yes.
And do you recall if someone had expressed a concern about skid resistance specifically?
No.
Okay, and you don't recall one way or the other, or no one raised it with you?
I don't recall it, no.
Sorry, I just want to deal your sort of level of certainty. There can be a distinction between I just don't remember one way or another, or no, I definitely,
Yeah.
I'm just
I
wondering
don't
whether you know which of those two it is.
I don't remember any concerns of friction specifically.
Okay. And do you know why both of these emails was sent to Mr. Odie and to Phillips, Mr. Moranson, rather than to Dr. Uzarowski at Golder? Given
I would,
given
yeah,
the quality assurance role.
yeah, and again, just the reporting, my lines of communication again would, are with Phillips, and certainly Marco is very much in tune with what's happening at this time too. So that would be his inclusion for that.
Fair enough for you, but Mr. Janikas, he also sent it to Phillips and Mr. Odie, and we know that he frequently communicated directly with them and on.
Yeah, again, I believe that this would have been the same conversation, and if you can imagine, we didn't have smartphones at that time, and I spent my days out on site, so I'm assuming there could have been a conversation where if Paul was at his laptop, I may have asked him just to forward it directly and copy me, which would be quite common for me to do at that time.
Sorry, what would have been common for you to do?
Have somebody send an email for me or communication, if I was out on site dealing with a matter or unavailable to email.
And do I understand you correctly that you don't have a specific recollection of those discussions or what happened, but just based on your practices and the lines of the communications that you described, that's what you think is likely the case?
Yes, that's what I believe, would have been my reaction to the information I'm seeing, yes.
And given the nature of the information that you were sending, is that something you would have expected Phillips or Mr. Odie to bring to Golder's attention?
Yeah, I would say they'd probably be having conversations regarding the information we were providing.
And did you have any knowledge at the time of whether or not it was provided to Golder?
No, I wouldn't. That would be up to Phillips and Marco.
Moving towards the test strip and the paving itself of the main line. Can you just describe a bit about Dufferin's typical surface layer paving practices back at that time?
Yeah, this
configuration of the train and
yeah,
the number of pavers, types of rollers, that sort of thing.
Yeah, so depending, this job called for the surface paving to be done in echelon, so we would have started with the if I worked from the, the front to the back, we would have had our transportation vehicles supplying the asphalt, dumping into the shuttle buggy. There'd be 2 pavers in line paving to keep that center line joint hot. And then we'd have our roller train in behind, and that could be, vary in number of rollers. A project like this, could be 4 or 5 rollers finishing, depending on the, temperatures and conditions we were exposed to. But yeah, and we'd have traffic closed off in behind there, so nobody was driving on the hot mat.
Right, like no construction.
Yep. That's right. Construction equipment and what have you. Bystanders, you'd be surprised.
Okay, and the shuttle buggy is what?
It's a material transfer vehicle, so it basically takes the asphalt from the truck, continues to mix it up through, right, and then it can by conveyor load it into the 2 pavers as needed as a place to mix off the back of the screen.
Right, and the paver itself are the machines that place the asphalt.
That's correct.
And what about the types of rollers? What kind of rollers are you typically using?
Yeah, so there'd be steel drum rollers, and then you would have rubber tire rollers.
Okay, and a rubber tire rollers, is that something that you use for the SMA or no?
Yeah, it's not something I typically get too involved with SMA, and I haven't done a lot of it, so I can't answer that.
I mean, you can't recall whether you did or not?
Yeah, I don't recall, no.
Okay. And what about the use of the vibratory setting on the rollers? Is it apart from this project? Is that typically Dufferin's project to use the vibration setting when it's rolling?
Not always. Again, it depends on the mix, the conditions, where we're paving, so it's that's something that's worked out with the our technical representative on site, in this case Paul, the paving foreman, and the roller operators. They come up with the sequence and the pattern for rolling that gives the desired results.
And is the intention with using the vibration setting is to achieve greater compaction?
Yeah, they would manage the setting to again to get better better results for the overall compaction of the mat that's being placed.
And are you familiar with issues about if rollers are too heavy, or potentially with SMA, if vibration is used, that it can potentially result in cracking of aggregates? Are those issues that you're familiar with?
Not really, no.
Not your end of things?
Yeah, no.
Okay. All right, if we could go to image 53, I guess we're there. 53 and 54, please. And so we know that Dufferin placed the test strip for the SMA on July 25th, 2007. And I understand you were present for the test strip. Is that correct?
Not the SMA, no.
Not the SMA?
No.
What ones were you present? There was an RBM test strip.
Yes. I was there the day we did the RBM test strip. Yes.
Okay, but you were not there for the SMA test strip?
I don't recall being there for the SMA test strip. No.
Okay. So you do not know where the test strip was placed, is that correct?
I know that's been a topic reviewed, and I would have known, again, my memory tells me I know what happens on my project, so I would know the location. Again, I recall something different, I think, than others, but I do recall the ramp we were looking for.
Okay, so I'm gonna, that's fine. I'm gonna ask the registrar to pull up RHV 93. Sorry, 930, I guess. So this is been made an exhibit. I'm not sure which one off the top of my head. It might be exhibit 17. I'll have to check that. But Dr. Uzorowski identified that the approximate location of the test strip at the Mud Street interchange in red on that document. Does that accord with your recollection or not?
No, I don't remember it there, no.
Okay, where do you?
Again, I wasn't present for that. I remember it being pretty much, kitty corner to that. So up near the subdivision on the other side is where I recall it. Certainly recall it being discussed, and that would be the east to north ramp, I guess.
Okay, and if we could, oh, it's exhibit, that's exhibit 22, just for the record, RHV 930. Okay, and if we could pull up RHV 929. Is that the ramp that's colored in yellow there? Is that the overall the ramp that you were just referring to?
Yes.
Okay. And you said you recalled discussions about it, but you weren't there for the actual placement. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay. So can you, I appreciate that that's your recollection, but can you state that Dr. Uzorowski is incorrect in his recollections? Or no?
I can't state that. That's what I remember. It was a long time ago. And that's what I recall, is that we wanted it on that ramp. It was a little longer. As you can see, the red mark you seen on the previous exhibit was short. And we were looking to have, if I recall, a little longer test strip to make sure that we could get as much time to make the adjustments to the mix. So we were looking for a bigger test area.
If we could make that the next exhibit, please. That's RHV 929. I think that's 41.
Noted, Council. Yes, it's exhibit 41.
If you could take that down, please. Was it, you weren't present for the testing of the, for the SMA test strip. I would have thought that that was something that would be important for you to be at, given that there was going to be, it was in the lead up to the SMA mainline paving, and that you are ultimately the site supervisor. Do you know why you didn't attend?
Again, I don't recall, and I don't disagree with what you're saying. I do know it was around my birthday, so maybe I had a day off. How dare I? But I may have had a day off. I'm not sure.
Okay. And so do you have any knowledge or of whether the vibration setting was used on the rollers for part or all of the test strip placement?
No, I don't recall any of that knowledge.
Okay. And are test strips, I mean, we know that there were 2 on this project. Are test strips something that's common in your experience?
No.
How often have you been involved in them? Do you recall?
That might be one of the only 2 times I've done test strips, to be honest.
Okay. And so if it's an uncommon event to have test strips, and as you know, it was a contractual requirement here to do test strips for the RBM and the SMA. Did you see those as important steps in the construction, in the paving?
I did, yes. And, I'll be honest with it being the perpetual asphalt and the rich bottom mix, I was more concerned about that because that's something that there was no knowledge of in Ontario at the time, to my knowledge. And I was quite curious on how that mix was going to go and how we were going to manage it further down on the main line. So I was very much interested in that. The SMA and the technical expertise of Dufferin and placing and knowledge of the industry, I felt confident in the SMA more so than the RBM.
Okay, but as you indicated, though, it was your first involvement in an SMA placement, and to your knowledge, it was Dufferin's first.
Yeah, in my business, I have to trust the people that I work with, and I trust my technical support.
And then there was a meeting on site on July 27th, so a couple of days later, to inspect the test strip. And Dr. Uzarovsky has some notes. If we could go to image 54 and OD3. That's in paragraph 109. Dr. Uzarovsky's notes in this smaller print, and he indicates that meeting with Marco Odie, James DCC, Andrew, and LU. Do you recall if you were at that meeting or no?
I don't recall, no.
You think you weren't at the meeting?
I don't believe so. I don't remember.
Okay. And at that meeting, we've heard that Dr. Uzarovsky indicated that there were issues with the test strip, and as you can see there, he indicates test strip is rejectable, and he talks about the test results that leading to that. And it refers to James DCC. Is that James Wari? Is there any other James that would have been?
I'm assuming it's James Wari. I don't remember any other James at that time.
Okay. And do you recall if the rejection or rejectableness of the test strip, or that the test strip was failed. Did that, as he says at the top of his note, that the test strip was failed. Do you recall that being raised with you by Mr. Wari or anyone else?
No,
There's later correspondence, but do you recall a discussion about this, or
I don't recall. No, don't remember.
just don't remember one way or the other?
Yep.
You could take that down, please. The next image, 55. Paragraph 111. So 4 days later, on July 31st, 2007, Dr. Uzorowski emailed Mr. Janikis, Mr. Odie, and Phillips. And it's not noted there, but you are actually copied on that email. And Dr. Uzorowski refers to issues with it. If you could, with the SMA test strip, could you please call that up? Just let me know when you've had a chance to review that.
Okay. Yep.
So Dr. Uzorowski concludes by saying the test strip is not acceptable. We recommend that a new test strip be completed. We understand that Dufferin Construction intends to place the SMA mix on the main line tomorrow. Dufferin Construction should be aware that the test strip has not been approved and the paving will be at their entire risk. So do you recall any discussions leading up to this email, any communications to Golder or the city or Phillips about Dufferin's intention to proceed?
I don't recall any direct communication about this. I again, going from my common practices, I got to think I'd be trying to get some insight on to what the city's and Phillips' position was on this, because ultimately that's where direction is intended. That comes to us. It would come from the CA or the city.
Right. So that's who you think you would have spoken to or had whatever communications with about the intention to proceed. Okay.
Yeah. I would not respond directly to Golder's on an email. That's not very clear to me. So,
well, I'm thinking about in advance of this because clearly Golder has been advised of this. And if I understood you correctly, you think that your communications about it would have been with Phillips or Mr. Odie or both about Dufferin's intention to proceed. Is that fair?
That's fair. Yes.
Okay. And who made the decision to proceed with the SMA paving on August 1st? Despite Dr. Uzorowski's comments that we've discussed at the meeting on the 27th and this email, do you recall?
It would have been a team decision. We're very open and communicate amongst our peers and the client in this case, I believe, and we would have made that decision together. And more importantly, Dufferin Construction would have made that decision. It may have been conversations with Paul Janicas, Peter Gamble, Jake Sudak, and myself. And we would make that decision together.
Okay, and do you know I appreciate that discussions occur. Do you know whose actual decision is it? Someone has to make a decision. Do you know?
Jake Sudak is the district manager, and that's who I report to. And ultimately, based on what he'd heard, he'd make a decision one way or the other.
Okay. In consultation with you and the others that you described?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. And Mr. Gamble testified that the decision to proceed would have been made by Mr. Sudak in consultation with you. Does that sound about right?
That's correct. Yes. Yep.
And I take it you were aware at the time that the contract indicated that if the test strip did not meet specifications, that the contractor would have to repeat the trial section. Is that something that you knew at the time?
I would have known what the contract said. Yes, I would have known what it said. Yes.
Okay. So if I understand correctly, while you don't have specific recollection, you're based on your practice, you think you would have had the discussions with with Mr. Odie and with the contract administrator about the intention to proceed in any event. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And do you recall being given the okay to proceed?
I don't recall, but I would say that we would have went ahead with them on board with our, the confidence that we could make the adjustments required to do the work. Anything we do out there is at our risk, and if we don't, give the owner an acceptable standard. We always have that risk that we remove and replace. So whether or not I do another test strip or I put it where it belongs, that's a decision that we felt confident we could do, and get to the point where we have an acceptable, paving surface out there that the city would accept.
And given it was your and Dufferin's first SMA placement, do you recall, was consideration given to that fact in deciding to proceed without redoing the test strip?
I gotta think, there would have been consideration to that, but at the same point, we, with the confidence of the team and our technical support, again, if we were supplying and placing a mix that wasn't meeting the contract, we would have ceased paving for that day early. We would have stopped early.
And we know that Dufferin did indeed commence the mainline SMA paving, so you can take that down, Registrar, on August 1st and completed it on August 13th. And do you recall the order of paving in terms of the direction of northbound, southbound lanes and where it started and proceeded and then ended?
I vaguely remember, to be quite honest, and I feel we started in the northbound lanes. I don't know exactly where we started, but I felt we started in the northbound lanes and then circled back southbound. We might have did it in sections, I don't recall exactly.
Okay, so if I understood you correctly, and I appreciate it's a long time ago and you've done a lot of paving jobs and you're recalling, but your best recollection at this time is you think, number one, you started in the northbound lanes. That's number one. Okay. And when you said then did that and then looped around, do you mean you did the northbound lanes and then did the southbound lanes?
That's right. Yeah.
Like in a loop? And do you know which end of the northbound lanes? Like the south end proceeding north in the direction that traffic would have gone, or the other way around? Do you recall?
Again, I don't recall specifically, but you know, I felt like we stopped paving at Barton, so we worked from south to north in the northbound lanes, and I felt like because of, you know, some of the stages of the work at the north end, we circled back at Barton Street and went back up the Red Hill Valley.
Back up. So then you mean
back up towards Mud Street? Yes.
Right, proceeding south. So went up north and then went back south in the southbound lanes. Is that right?
That's what I recall. I'm
not trying to trap you. I'm just trying to get your best recollection.
Yeah, no, that's my best recollection.
Okay. One moment. And again, just you talk about about Barton Street. Barton Street wasn't the northernmost limits of this paving, right? It went up to the where the MTO project ultimately began for the interchange, which was at the around
just past the Rennie Street landfill there. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So are you saying you think that, and I think you mentioned because of construction stuff that was going on at that point, that you loop back to go south before you hit the northernmost limits? Is that right? Does that sound right?
Yeah, that's what I kind of remember. Yes.
Okay.
That's what I remember.
Okay, and then presumably would have completed the last part, the northernmost portion after that. Is that right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. I think generally speaking, the compaction results that we've seen do support that. We'll have to check back now. I want to take you to the first nuclear density report, the compaction report from Golder, which is at GOL 1718. And if you could pull that up in native, please, Registrar. And Registrar, if you could just, I know you did, thank you. You knew where I was going. So what we have here is as the Golder August 1st nuclear density test results summary. And you'll see it's got in the third column, it refers to the station in its direction NBL, northbound lanes. See that?
Yep.
So does that accord with your recollection as you just described to us, starting in the northbound lanes?
Yes.
And the 2100, that's at the south end, right?
I don't recall where 21 plus 900 is. My apologies.
That's fine. Okay, and if do you have any recollection? We can go to the bottom here. There's reference in this document to at the very bottom to the vibration being used for a portion for 1,300 meters and not vibration for 1,950 meters for a total paved of 3,250. Did you see that? Do you have any recollection of whether Dufferin was using vibration on the rollers at that time?
No,
Not one way or the other?
no, not one way or the other, no.
Okay. And is that something that would be at your direction or not at your direction? Who's making the decision on site at that time to do that or not?
That would be a big part would be Paul Janicus, the paving foreman, and maybe even discussions. I believe at that time the quality manager was Wade O'Leary. So there would have been some discussions in real time as the operation was progressing, and getting confirmation with the results, behind the paving training.
And on subsequent days, do you know one way or the other whether Dufferin was using the vibration mode on its rollers or not?
I do not know. No.
And do you recall if there were concerns raised about compaction results in the first number of days of the paving?
I don't recall. No.
Don't recall one way or the other?
I don't remember the concerns.
Do you recall that there being any changes in the way in which the rolling pattern and the approach to the paving as it proceeded?
I knew that there was Paul and the team were working to improve it, but not necessarily dramatic changes, but they were always continually there monitoring it closely and making those adjustments. Yes.
Okay, so for example, about using an increased number of rollers, do you recall that? A change being made into the number of rollers?
I don't recall that, but it's quite possible that does happen.
Okay. Or following more closely behind with the rollers behind the paver screed?
Yeah, that's another thing we do in the industry from time to time. Yes.
In order to improve the compaction?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you recall any issues being raised with you about the particular issues about SMA and difficulties with compaction respecting SMA?
I don't recall.
You can take that down, please, Registrar. And if we would go to overview document 3, image 58. And in paragraph 120, see there's an email on August 9th from Mr. Odie, emailing to you, Mr. Gamble, and James Wari, along with Phillips. And he writes, this correspondence confirms that the Varennes de Mix aggregates have been approved for use in the SMA and Superpave 12.5 FC2 surface course asphalt mixes on the Red Hill Valley Parkway mainline paving project. The trial batches for both mixed designs met the specified requirements. If you have any questions, please call me. Do you recall receiving this email?
I don't recall, no.
And do you know why Mr. Odie sent it to Mr. Gamble, you, and Mr. Wari and Phillips?
I don't recall. I would say it'd be from a conversation on site and closing the loops from the previous requests that we have within the contract that we've viewed.
Okay. And this is an aggregate approval email. He's specifically referring to aggregates. Would you agree that typically Golder was the point of contact for Dufferin with respect to mixed design and aggregate approval? You agree with that?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have any insight as to why specifically this was sent to Dufferin and Phillips rather than Golder?
No, I don't know that answer.
All right, if we could go to overview document 4 now. I'm going to ask you, I'm going to show you a few documents about the MTO's skid testing that took place on the Red Hill after the paving was completed. And then I'm just going to ask you a few questions based on that. I'll take you to a few emails first just to place it for you. Okay, image 55 and 56, please. So you'll see on paragraph 126, which straddles the 2 pages. This isn't an email that you're copied on. It's Golder and the MTO, and it's talking about friction testing is going to take place on Tuesday, October 9th. We know that eventually it actually took place on the 16th. And he's talking about making arrangements for it to be for it to take place. And then if you look at paragraph 127 on the top of the next page, Mr. Delis Reyes of Golder forwarded that email to Phillips and to Dufferin at Mr. Wari's email address, stating, "Gentlemen, for your information and permission." And then now if we could go to Dufferin DUF 2709.01, which is exhibit 32, already been made an exhibit. You'll see at the bottom is the email I just referred you to, where Mr. Delis Reyes says, "Gentlemen, for your information and permission." He sent it to Phillips and Mr. Wari, and then Mr. Wari flips it to you at the top on October 4th. Just saying, "Please find attached Mandra regarding skid resistance testing to take place on October 9th. And as I said, it eventually takes place on the 16th. And first of all, why are you being brought in right to this at that time? Do you recall?
Yeah, again, it's our site, and we would have had to make sure there was time and space and people out of the way for this testing to occur. So we would have had to make sure we vacated the area for that duration specified.
Right. So still a construction site.
Yep.
Okay. And then going back to overview document 4, register and image 59. Paragraph 136 at the bottom of the page. This is the day after the MTO skid testing actually took place. Mr. Delis Reyes of Golder emails the MTO, Mr. Marciello, and he wrote, just a reminder, please email test result as discussed. Dufferin and Phillips Engineering are highly interested. Do you recall Dufferin's interest in the skid test results?
I don't recall specifically. Certainly, if anybody's doing tests on our work, we would be interested in the results and what the outcome was for sure. I don't remember anything specifically, beyond that.
Okay. And you personally, do you recall expressing that interest?
I don't personally remember that, no.
And is skid testing something that you had or skid test results that you had any knowledge of or experience with?
I did have some experience with it prior to this. It was totally different issue on different owner and yeah, all kinds of different circumstances, but that's the only other experience I had.
Okay. What kind of skid testing was it? Do you recall?
It was the same thing, but it was a surface that accidentally got tack coated. And the question was the friction good enough to withstand traffic? Could we put it on it, or was it going to have to be subject to some remedial work?
Oh, what kind of device was used to test the friction? Do you recall?
I think it was an MTO job, and I think they brought out their unit. I don't recall exactly, but I'm pretty sure the friction was assessed by their equipment.
Okay, so it was MTO. So
yeah,
their locked wheel tester.
Yeah, yes, that's right.
But okay. So from your reaction there, though, I take it. So you were aware of skid testing. Did you have any particular knowledge or expertise about it?
Zero. And again, this was something where we put a basically glue on top of an asphalt that wasn't supposed to get it, right? So it's a total different situation than what we were testing for here.
Right. So it's a contaminant essentially on the asphalt that you needed to then test to make sure it had adequate frictional qualities as a result.
That's right. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. And back to the Red Hill skid testing.
Mm-hmm.
And did you personally ever receive the results of the skid testing?
I don't remember receiving them, no.
Okay. And do you recall ever being told about the results?
I vaguely remember that the results were good, and there was no concerns with the results. Certainly, I would have known if there was an issue, and that never came forward. So,
do you recall who advised you of that?
I do not know.
Do you recall how you were advised? Was it a telephone call, an in-person meeting?
It could have been in passing on the job, and again, or it could have been at the site meeting. I'm not sure if that came out in the minutes of the meeting at all, but it could have been in passing. I know, through it could have been through our technical department, Paul or Peter Gamble. I don't recall how I got the message.
Okay, so there isn't anything in the site meeting minutes, I can tell you that, and there isn't.
Okay.
We don't have any email communication or anything like that from Dufferin that would say it. So, do you think that it was? You mentioned through your technical department. Could it also have come from external to Dufferin?
It may have. It could have been from many. Yeah, it may have came external, but I don't think it was anything formal, except there was no concerns, right? and that may have, I know there was other tours and stuff happening on the job. And again, I don't know the timing in the industry. If it came out on that, I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, there were a number of tours and events and so forth that took place before the opening. There was an AMPA pave-in event, for example, and other things. But just to summarize your evidence, is it fair to say that you believe that you were advised that the results, the friction test results were good and there were no concerns with it, but you don't recall where you received that information from? Is that a fair summary?
Yeah, I recall that there was no concerns. That's what I recall, and how that message got to me, I do not remember.
Okay, it's 20 after 11, Commissioner. I may have a couple more questions, but I may be done. So I'm wondering, and also I should confer with council just about their time in order for examinations. So perhaps this would be a good time for a break.
Okay, sorry, I was on mute there. That's fine. Then let's stand adjourned until 25 to 12.
Registrar, could you just take all council into the all council breakout room just so we can have a brief discussion? Thank you.
Commissioners?
Please go.
Thank you.
I don't have any further questions, so over to Council Jennifer Roberts.
Commissioner, may I begin?
Please proceed.
Thank you. Mr. Hayner, I'm Jennifer Roberts and I'm counsel for Golder, and I have a few questions and I'm going to take you in a bit of a different direction, so please bear with me. First of all, just to confirm, you are the project superintendent for the grading as well as the paving part of the project?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to take you to the grading, the grading contract. And just to ask you, in preparing to attend today, did you have a chance to look at any of the drawings?
No, not specifically, no.
Okay. And I guess I should just observe that the drawings that we have are the issued for tender drawings more recently, and these come from Dufferin. So thank you, Dufferin. More recently, Hamilton has found as constructed and some as built drawings, but not for the main alignment. Can I please ask the registrar, can you please turn up Dufferin 2535? And can we please go to image 25? So, sir, I'm showing you a drawing of the main line of the Red Hill Valley Parkway. This is a drawing prepared by Phillips. Were you aware that there were 3 designers for the 3 parts of the Parkway alignment?
Yes.
And so this is the Phillips section. And the evidence is the Phillips section is basically the middle section in the Parkway. Does that fit with your recollection?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And I'm showing you this section, and if you look at the top right corner, that shows where on the alignment the larger drawing is. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And I take it, sir, looking at drawings is something that in your day-to-day work you do all the time?
Yes.
Thank you. Can we please go back to, sorry, hold on, let me hold this. So the evidence is that this part of the alignment is actually the tightest radius turn on the Red Hill Valley Parkway. And in fact, it's a 420 meter radius turn. Is that something that you knew?
I didn't know the exact radius that was there, but I knew there was a curve there and that it was significant in alignment. Yes.
Okay. And when looking at these drawings, there are no elevations depicted on them. Registrar, can you just enlarge a little bit so we don't really impose on Mr. Hayner's eyesight here? Can you make that? There we go. Okay. And so this section where we're looking at the turn section, I would expect to see on drawings that the elevations would show the cant of the road, the super elevation of the road. Would that be your usual experience in looking at these drawings?
No, it generally we would get grading templates, and they would be provided at the increments, along the alignment, and they would give us our offsets and elevations from control line. It just you can see the drawings get quite busy. Again, this is my opinion. The drawings get quite busy, and that's why they don't put elevations on these particular plan drawings.
Okay, so I have to say I'm relieved to hear it, because I have been looking at these things with my client and trying to figure out how the hell Dufferin actually constructed from this. So
yeah, yeah.
Okay. So let me just, though, understand, just say to get a sense of your understanding of what should be shown here. So on this turn, which from the northbound lane, which is the bottom lane here, is going to the right. My understanding is that the higher elevation should be at the top end of this drawing, and that there should be a cant flowing down to the bottom of the drawing, bottom of the alignment on the drawing.
Yeah, that sounds logical. Typically there is cross sections or typical sections that would kind of come through the curve and would show you those, the super elevated cross section of this area.
Okay, and that's exactly what I was getting after. So the way this turn is actually affected is not only side to side, but there is a change in the vertical and the elevations to provide a cant so that the slope of the road assists the driver in navigating the turn. Is that correct?
Yeah, those are design elements, and again, and they're, that's put in and generates the grading templates, and that's what we construct to whatever's provided in those details. Okay, so we don't have grading templates, so I'm going to have to ask for your description of them. They'll be a specific location on the larger drawing, so that's determined, so they'll be showing us a station number to a station number, and they'll show the precise elevations at that area. Is that what they do? Yeah, if you were to take example, take those 3 arrows on the bottom left corner and you drew a line through there. Yeah. At each of those edges of the lane, you would get an offset from the control line, which I presume is in the center of the highway here. And you would have an offset, say at 5 meters, and you would have an elevation given there. And you'd get all the breakpoints in that line. So where it changes in elevation. Okay. That's very helpful in understanding. Thank you. And so, just so I understand this, so at each of the layers of the granular, as you're building up the road, you're shooting elevations at each level to ensure that the ultimate design elevations will be met. Is that how that works? That's correct, yes. Okay, and the contours, in fact, the super elevation is set from the base layers, these granular layers of the highway. That's correct? Yes, that's typical, yes. Okay. And can you tell me what the tolerance is for grading when the contractor is putting down? Like what's the acceptable variation from the design? Yeah, there's the OPSS that we follow. So those grading specifications, we follow the tolerances there for for subgrade granular tolerances. Do you recall off the top of your head what they are? I don't recall what they were for this contract. Okay. And was it Dufferin whose surveyors would shoot the elevations to confirm that they conformed with what you're telling me is the grading template? We would have our Dufferin grade person that would he would verify from the alignment stakes that are provided by the surveyor. They would measure the offset and elevation at those corresponding points with the grading templates. And would that be reviewed by the contract administrator, Phillips, at the time? Yep, they would have the that information available to them whenever they wanted to check. Yes. Okay, so they wouldn't necessarily check each of the elevations shot, but they would, I'm assuming, do they would check some of them for conformance. Yeah, and again, the interval on which they check generally is fairly, is very often. I don't recall on this job it being any different.
Right. And it's sometimes the case that it's the contractor who prepares as constructed drawings. Do you know whether in this instance, Dufferin prepared as constructed drawings?
I can't say with certainty. Generally, we do provide as constructed drawings, but I can't say with certainty. And they would detail basically changes to the contract only. So it would redline, for example, if a culvert got extended 2 meters, we would put on there that the culvert got extended 2 meters.
Okay. And would the as constructed drawings show, well, let me just ask for another question. Did Dufferin shoot elevations at the completion of the paving contract?
I don't recall. I don't recall that.
Would that be usual?
No.
Okay. In other words, by the time you get to the paving, you're paving the specified layers for the different layers of asphalt. That's correct?
That's correct.
So you're you've got the specified layers on top of where you shot the elevations at the top of the granular. Do I have that right?
Yes.
Okay. And just going back to the point on the as constructed drawings, would the as constructed drawings show the elevations?
Not normally, no.
Wouldn't. Okay. So the only way of telling whether the elevations and ultimately the super elevations were achieved is if you had the grading templates?
Can you repeat the question? Sorry.
Yeah. So what I'm trying to figure out is what record there would be of the design that at the end of the day Hamilton would have. And so my question is the only way that you could tell what the elevations actually were, and therefore the super elevations, would be by actually having the grading template?
I would say it would be from determining what the surface of the asphalt was.
Okay, so the grading templates would give you the elevations to the top of the granular, and it would give you the super elevations. It would give you the slope of the super elevations, though, wouldn't it?
It would, yes. Yep.
Okay. Okay, but you're saying that in order to establish where the final design elevations were and the templates, you would have had to shoot them when the paving was completed?
Correct, yes.
And unless that was done, you'd have to be interpreting from these other documents what the elevations should have been. That's correct?
Yes.
Okay. And so let me just address the piece of evidence. So we've heard evidence from Marco Odi that he didn't see a need to have as constructed drawings because what was constructed accorded with the design, and Hamilton would therefore know what was constructed. And I suggest to you, just as I have, that you can't, that not only do these drawings by themselves not tell you what was designed, but they certainly don't tell you what was constructed. You'll agree with that?
This drawing alone does not tell you what's constructed for crossfall, no.
Okay.
I would agree with that.
Okay. Thank you very much for your patience. Thank you, sir. Those are my questions.
Okay.
Commissioner, I'm not sure if other council have any questions. Council for the city said they would have no questions. MTO reserved 5 minutes, although we're unsure. So, Mr. Burrick, could you advise?
We don't have any questions for Mr. Hayner. Thank you.
Okay. And then that leaves Ms. McAleer for Dufferin.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. I just have 2 questions to ask this witness. Mr. Registrar, could you bring up folder 3082, please? This is the email of July 31st, 2007 from Mr. Yuzarowski to a number of people. If we could just enlarge the to and from and time box, please, Mr. Registrar. Thank you. So Mr. Hayner, you'll recall that Mr. Lewis asked you some questions about this email that was sent by Mr. Yuzarowski to a number of people, and you were one of the recipients that we see there in the 2 line. Do you remember those questions, sir?
Yes.
Okay. And looking at the hour that this email was sent, 5:42 p.m. on July 31st, do you know, Mr. Hayner, whether or not you would have seen this email prior to attending at the site the next morning to commence the paving?
It'd be very unlikely I would see this email during this time frame. We didn't have, or I didn't have a smartphone, so I wouldn't have seen this unless I went and fired up my laptop. So I wouldn't have known this that night or the next morning.
Do you say that, sir, because did you have a practice of checking your email in the morning before attending at a work site? Do you recall if you did that back in 2007?
Generally, I wouldn't. My priority would be the operations that were set up the previous night to make sure things were all flowing correctly and people were where they needed to be. And you know, later in the morning, I would generally get to my office to catch up on any correspondence that was needed.
And during this time period, so August 1st of 2007, what time would you typically start paving in the morning, or what time would you be on site?
The crews would start paving or be on site around 6:30, and with operation to start around 7 o'clock, our general hours.
And sorry, is that when you would be on site as well?
Yeah, it would vary, sometimes earlier than that, just to drive through the job, and in my line of work, you live on the job, so I could be there at 5, 6 in the morning, well ahead of the planned start time.
And I take it, sir, today you have no recollection as to what time you may have actually been on site on August 1st, 2007?
No idea. No, okay. I don't know.
All right. And you'll recall that Mr. Lewis asked you who made the decision to proceed with the SMA paving on August 1st, despite Dr. Yuzarowski's comments at the July 27th site meeting, that was about the test strip, and his email of July 31st. And you indicated in response it would have been a team decision. Do you remember that, Mr. Hayner?
I do, yes.
Okay. And do you know if the decision to proceed was made before or after Dr. Yuzarowski's email of July 31st, taking into account the time at which it was sent?
It would have been made beforehand. I wouldn't have had communications after 5 o'clock, generally. Be very rare.
Thank you, Mr. Hayner. Those are all of my questions.
You're welcome.
Okay.
I don't have any further questions, Commissioner.
Okay, well, first of all, Mr. Hayner, thank you very much for appearing before the inquiry. You're excused if you want to be.
Thank you.
Now, with respect to the timing, I understand the next witness, we begin now a section of witnesses of the MTO. Is that correct, Mr. Lewis?
That's correct.
And the first witness is going to be made available on a full day basis. I also understand that one of the law firms is not available tomorrow in their entirety, with the result that we're not sitting tomorrow. Is that correct?
Tomorrow and Friday.
And we will not be sitting on Friday, as is the schedule, which means that we would stand adjourned now until Monday morning at 9:30. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so unless there's anything further that we have to do this morning, and I don't think there is, we will stand adjourned until 9:30 on Monday morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Yep.